Hey, it's Inve. I'm here with FromCheng from Reddit, the current most quoted person on the internet when it comes to Armored Core 6. I figured I would reach out to him and hopefully get some clarification on a few things to hopefully calm the waters in the Armored Core community a little bit. So I've gathered some questions from his AMA that we can hopefully get a little bit more detail on, and hopefully everyone can settle down. Cheng, if you want to say hello.
Hey guys, this is FromCheng. I'm the creator of AC Legacy, and I had a chance to go out to the Summer Game Fest to see the Armored Core 6 presentation that was given. And I also did an AMA to just sort of hopefully clear things up a little bit more for the community. So yeah, hopefully I'll get a chance to do that here in just a moment and provide a little bit more clarification for everyone.
Awesome. So let's jump right into that. So in your Reddit AMA, you said the lock-on was like a pretty hard lock, kind of comparable to Gundam Maxi Boost, I believe was the example that you used.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so to elaborate a bit more, so for those of you who haven't played Gundam Maxi Boost or really the Versus series of Gundam games, basically the way it works is when you spawn into the game right before you fight your opponent, you basically have a lock-on that's always on the opponent. So, regardless of where you move on the stage, how far you get away, it's always going to be on there. And it was sort of a closest approximation I could get to how the lock-on sort of works in Armored Core 6. Keep in mind, it doesn't work the exact same way. So you are able to sort of freely control the camera when you're not locked onto anything. And you do have to be at a certain distance in order to lock on to the opponent. So if you're far enough away, there's no lock on at all. But otherwise, once you are in range and have an opponent, it puts a reticule on that particular enemy and it stays on there for the most part.
Okay. So that pretty much answers the second half of that question. I was wondering, it sounds a lot closer to the accursed souls word, as they say, than say 4th gen, which is the current comparison point that a lot of people have been using. Do you think it's as hard as Dark Souls, or do you think that it's soft enough where it could potentially be broken?
So this is where it gets a little bit difficult because during that presentation, they basically didn't let us ask any questions and they didn't really elaborate on a lot of stuff. So a lot of that demo was basically giving insight for the media and internet personalities they had there. But basically the way that I saw it worked, it didn't look like there was a way to break lock on. Based on the gameplay that they showed us. It was very similar to what you saw with the released gameplay footage. At the same time, there were some sort of things here and there that leads me to believe that you have ways to break lock-on. Because keep in mind, when they showed the gameplay, they didn't really show it against super agile enemies. They were like mainly of average speed. And yeah.
Got it. So I mean, them being extremely vague does sound very FromSoft of them. Honestly speaking,
yeah.
they're oh, gotta love them. But yeah, that is definitely interesting to hear that you didn't see the lock on actually break in combat. I'm definitely interested to see how they bring that in. I saw in your post you mentioned that potentially staggering might be a way of having your lock on broken, but did you see that explicitly shown, or was it just like a potential theory?
No, so they did explicitly show when an AC was fully staggered. So basically, it's sort of the base mechanic works the way we expect it to. So when you're staggered, your AC is basically stunned for a short period of time and it doesn't move. I did look at my notes and I did make a note that the reticule was still there, even though the AC was stunned. Although obviously they couldn't shoot or do anything else.
Okay, so even stagger might not break it. That's kind of crazy. I'm definitely interested to see how that'll play.
I wonder too if there's like multiple levels of stagger. So Armored Core 5 had it, and Verdict Day had it to a little bit of a degree, but obviously with how the mechanics changed, you didn't see it. But I'm wondering if there's like a level 1, level 2, level 3, where 1 you get staggered, you can't move for a little bit. Level 2 or 3, maybe it staggers you longer, and then you lose lock on. But didn't see that, but that could be a thing here since they're pulling a lot from 5th gen.
Got it. And so, with that in mind, how do you think that the quick turning will play into that? I saw on the AMA that you mentioned that quick turning was a manual action in the game, but if you're always
Yeah.
locked on, how does it kind of play around that? Is the camera decoupled from your AC, so the camera and your AC can be facing different directions, and you have to kind of reconcile the two?
Yeah, so it is. It looks like it is decoupled, and I mentioned this in the AMA as well. When they start the level, they actually do sort of a slow pan of the AC, so they sort of look around the AC, and then there's another point, and I think it may be in the gameplay footage as well, where the AC is on one level, and then it looks up to the other level because there are enemies there, but it hasn't locked on yet. So there is a decoupling. So it's not like a full true hard lock on where you have to be locked on to opponent, otherwise you can't move around or see anything. But from what I saw, quick turn looked to be manual because they only showed it a few times in the demo. So in my notes, I noted there was one time they showed it when they were fighting the smaller MTs, and then there was one time they showed it when they were fighting the bigger quad MT. After you get ambushed the second time. So, and I think there's also a statement by Yang Ye, who is also there at the presentation, where he saw it was like, an actual physical input as well. Because I believe he was sitting on the back couch, and that's where the guy in the booth was, holding the controller.
Oh man, I really wish that I could have just like glued a camera to that guy's like
Yeah.
chest, just looking straight down like a Call of Duty game, you know.
Yep.
Um, just as a personal aside, the laser blade on that quad looks really cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that very interesting to hear also as well. I'm glad to hear again more confirmation that quick turn is a manual action. So with quick turn being known of, there's the other big sore spot of the Dark Souls turn GIF, which I'm
Right.
sure you knew would be mentioned. A lot of people think that the
Yeah.
turn speed isn't in the game because of it. In the GIF, just for anyone who's out of the loop, there's an AC that turns, and it doesn't seem like it has turn speed on it. It'll be on screen. In your post, though, I noticed that you mentioned that our AC moves differently while it's engaged in combat and while it's not in combat. Do you think that Dark Souls turn GIF is an out of combat only thing, or from what you saw, did it look like turning speed is truly not in the game?
It looks like it's purely out of combat, because basically the movement works a bit differently when you're locked on versus not. As I mentioned before, when you're locked on, you're basically always facing the opponent with, the very few scenarios where the enemy boosts right past you very quickly, and at which point, you've got to do that quick turn. Um, but otherwise, you have almost full freedom of movement when you are, not in combat, because you're not locked in anymore. So it's almost like a navigation mode. You can basically move how you want. So that's what I believe it is.
Okay, that's really cool to hear. In my last giant copium rant about Armored Core 6, I said I hope that's how that will work. So I'm really happy to hear that does appear to be how it works. And again, for anyone in the audience, we are sticking to appear to be because, pre-release footage and all. But that sounds really cool. Moving on from that giant question, you briefly touched on melee in your AMA. From what you saw, will blade lunches be more like 4 answer, where you're sort of auto-locked and just swoop in, or does it look more like Armored Core 4 and 5 and old gen, where you just kind of swing in front of you?
I would say it's probably closer to 4, that you still have a homing and lock on sort of on the opponent. So it's not. I would say this is the one area where it's completely different from 5th gen, because with 5th gen it was completely manual and you had to read your read your opponent's move and sort of go about that way. And then with 3rd gen it did have some blade locking if you were in the air and during specific games, but I think this one's mostly closer to 4th gen, where there is homing, but it's not super fast. So you'll use it sometimes to close distance if you're close enough, but you're not trying to do it from like a long range. You do want to be at a fairly close distance, because the other thing too, and I brought this up on the AMA, and I'm surprised like a lot of other people didn't bring this up, is that your melee weapon actually overheats. So I think if you use it in too short of an interval, or if you use it too much, it puts you're vulnerable. You try to go in too much and then your weapon's overheating.
Well, that's actually super interesting information. I haven't heard anybody mention that like at all. That's really weird that no one said that.
You know
That's
what?
kind of huge.
It's very subtle, because you've probably seen Vati Vidya's his mock-up of the UI, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's basically spot on. There's a couple things he's missing. He's missing the booster on and off, which is I think to the right of the health bar, the stagger bar on top of the energy, but I think you pointed out in the video. But basically, your weapon ammo is in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you're not paying attention to that, you can actually easily miss that. And I happened to be sitting in the front row, so I could just see it right off the bat. There was like I think the message is specifically called overheating.
Okay, well that's super cool. I assume that same similar mechanic or something similar will probably come into play with energy weapons as well, but that's just speculating, of course. Yeah, that's super interesting information. Another funny comment I've been seeing a lot is people mentioning not being able to fly vertically without a jump pad. I haven't seen any actual source for that information, but I just want to make sure. Can you just like fly up?
Yeah, so it basically works like in 3rd gen, and I mean honestly probably 4th gen too, where you can just boost upwards. Basically in all directions except straight down. I think that one you just have to cut your boosters still. But you do not need jump pads. Like the stage that we were demoed is the same one that you saw the gameplay footage reveal. You can see that there's some places where there's no ground. It's basically platforms where you have to go up. And there's only like 1 or 2 jump pads on that map. So if you had to use jump pads for everything, you'd be stuck. But you are able to basically go vertical per sort of 3rd gen and 4th gen.
Okay, and then I also saw that you mentioned that the energy drain was closer to 3rd gen than 4th gen, right? So you would be more limited on vertical flight than say 4th.
Yeah, and I think I need to explain a little bit how energy works. I don't think this was covered very properly by the other people who were there. So basically, you have an energy bar, and whenever you use a boost, so if you go up in the air, if you do like, I don't remember the official names of the boost methods, but like glide boost, where you're boosting, forward in a direction, or the high boost where you're doing that quick dash like movement, it uses energy. Now, sort of the key thing here is that your energy doesn't start recovering immediately once you use a boost move. So let's say you do a quick boost and it takes 10% of your energy. Stays there. It doesn't automatically regenerate unless you stop using your boosters. Now, one interesting thing I noted is when I looked at my notes is that I think there's an active and passive state for the boosters. So if you use your boosters and you start floating upwards, that uses energy. But if you let off like the trigger or whatever button you do, and your boosters are still on, but you're sort of floating downwards, your energy starts recovering. That was the only scenario that I saw that. And basically every other scenario, if you used any sort of boost, drains energy, and then it doesn't recover until you basically hit the ground again. And then last thing too, I'm wondering if there's also like a red zone limit like there used to be in the old 3rd gen. So basically, to explain that, when you boost at the very bottom of your generator capacity, there's sort of like a red section where basically you boost and you're in that sort of red section, it depletes much slower. So I saw that when the energy gets to about 10 to 30%, the white bar, once it decreases, it starts to glow red. But I didn't see enough to know for sure, but there may potentially be a red zone limit.
That's all very interesting, actually. So it sounds like Yeah, sustained flight is definitely going to be really challenging. I'm very interested to see how that affects the PvP of the game. Maybe it'll make reverse joints insanely
Eh,
powerful.
You know,
Um,
I would say like there seems to be, so obviously you have like, we
mhm.
already know this, but it seems like there is sort of an emphasis on more grounded combat, and we're talking a little bit more grounded than fifth gen, because fifth gen isn't as grounded as people think it is,
Right, it's very wall kicky.
because yeah, because excuse me, because when you're on the ground, you know that energy starts to regenerate pretty quickly, because you're already on there. So it seems like they are sort of pushing more for that. But obviously, with the bigger maps and the general design, they still want that overall 3D combat.
Got it. And then you mentioned boosters being a booster toggle earlier. So I take it to mean that the boosters kind of work like they do in fifth gen, where it's a toggle button, as opposed to how in fourth gen you have like a pressure sensitive hold.
Yeah, that's well, I think it's actually a combination of both. And this is where I'm still not 100% sure because they haven't given us enough information. Because it has that indicator message of booster on and booster off. But it looks like you have a way, like when you're flying, to sort of almost like take your gas, take your foot off the gas, where you're still moving at a certain speed, but it's slower and you're descending. So my thoughts, based on what they've shown us, and just purely that, it's probably a combination of the two, where you have some level of booster toggle, but you also have sort of that control as well from fourth gen.
I really can't wait to see the control scheme of this game.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's what I'm really getting from this.
Mhm.
I am really wondering how they're going to reconcile being able to control your boosters output while having all the pressure sensitive buttons allegedly being mapped to weapons. Which,
Hopefully, there will be something in the near future which gives us a little bit of better insight, because there's just a lot of question marks here and not a lot of answers for them.
yeah, well, we'll just move on from that speculation portion there because while it is really cool to think about, we don't really know. One thing I did wonder about was, did you see them heal in the demo you were shown, and if so, how quickly did it heal you?
So we were shown it in the demo. So there's a portion in the gameplay reveal where you kick. No, it's before you kick that empty units that looks like a barrel and it's hiding. So a
Mhm.
little bit before that, they basically stayed stationary for a little bit to allow the AC to take damage. And what happens is when you use a repair kit, your AC sort of gets enveloped in like this blue light slash blue lightning, and then it heals you, and it's almost instantaneous.
Okay.
But they did it, sort of like at the very end of combat after they've destroyed the enemies. So I don't know if you get hit during it, if it interrupts it, but it was very fast.
I wonder if it's even combat available or if it's a an out of combat only mode thing, but that would
Oh, I
be
think
again more speculation.
they showed it one more time when we fought the, what do you call it, the final boss, the one that looks like a Shagohod and a Capricorn had a baby.
That's
Um,
a great description.
yeah, but they did use it in combat. Now that I think about it, I had to look at my notes for that portion.
Okay, so healing can be done in combat and it's almost instant. That's definitely interesting. I really am wondering if they're gonna take this opportunity to make just the absolute most destructive boss humanly possible. It's probably gonna be painful.
Probably multi-stage bosses, which kind of worried about, but it's they've done it
Yeah,
something similar before, so
the millennia of Armored Core 6, you know?
yeah.
um, Moving on from that, a big favorite of mine in the fourth gen games is chain boosting, which we've kind of seen in one of the trailers. But we didn't really see much more advanced movement in anything else past that. Did you get to see any advanced movement techniques? Or if they showed chain boosting, did you get a feel on how it looks comparatively to fourth gen?
Yeah, so, and a lot of people have asked me this to sort of some degree or another, but the way I like to relate this is when you're talking about the boosting method and how it works, it's closer to fifth gen than fourth gen, in the sense of, um, that high boosting / quick boosting, that's not your main form of movement, and you can't chain them as rapidly, and you don't get as much distance. So it's more used for combat purposes. So it's closer to 5th gen in that respect. When it comes to chain boosting, you can sort of do it, but because of the distance, the cooldown, and the amount of energy you have, you can do it maybe 2 or 3 times in a row, but it's not super efficient. When it comes to advanced techniques, they didn't really show anything. It was still mainly what you saw from the gameplay reveal. And honestly, with the Armored Core games, it's always been a thing where like the complexity, the depth, make it very easy to hide what you can do with the game. Because like if you take base Armored Core 5 and Verdict Day, they look very slow. But once you have a chance to master even some of the mechanics, that game gets you moving pretty fast. So they didn't show anything, I would say, super impressive. They really just showed us some basic movement.
Okay, well, yeah, that's super cool to hear again about the chain boosting and restrictions rather on that, and how quick boosting seems to be more of a positional tool rather than a pure movement tool, as it is in 4th. Definitely sounds like it might lend an air of more deliberate gameplay to 6 than the spammy movement that I think people are kind of expecting from seeing a quick boost. Anyway, I think this just about wraps everything up. I've got one final question for you right before I think we're good here, and we've covered all the stuff I wanted to know. Checkpoint systems. You mentioned that in your AMA that enemies respawn after checkpoints. Did it look like they respawn in the half you'd already cleared, or just the half you're yet to beat towards the boss?
I think it was basically the point right before the boss. So it's in the demo, it's the same as with the gameplay reveal footage. Or actually, I can't remember if it is the same. But basically, when you're ambushed the second time, and then those fuel crates come from above and explode. But basically, what happens there is, at that point in the demo, the AC gets destroyed by that quad MT, and then at that point, it takes us into, restart to checkpoint, restart mission, or, quit back to main menu. So basically, if you die, it basically works like it would in a normal checkpoint system. It basically resets that portion of the map. They didn't travel back to previous portions, but I'm assuming that they have those closed off. That's typically how they do the stages. But yeah, basically it resets that particular portion of the stage.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think all this together has been super enlightening. Thank you again for coming on and for this information, some of which I don't think I'd heard elsewhere before. So it's really, really cool to learn some more stuff. If there's anything you want to plug here at the end of the video, the floor is all yours.
Absolutely. So it's been a couple days now, so we still have the AMA open, where if you have any questions about Armored Core 6 in terms of what the press was shown at the Summer Game Fest, please go ahead and find that. If you're just looking for AC content in general, you can find us on Facebook on armoredcorelegacy.com, YouTube as well, and then Twitter at aclegacies.com.
And I'll also have all that stuff linked down in the description of the video, so go ahead and check them out, give them a follow on all his medias, and bother him with hundreds more questions on Reddit. Probably not hundreds more. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you again so much for your time.